He was the man no one noticed. For years, Jonah Miller lived in the background of a law firm, just another quiet figure pushing papers. But one dinner invitation from his powerful CEO would flip his life upside down and set him on a path he never thought he'd dare to take. Tonight, we follow the story of how an invisible man stepped into the spotlight, found his voice, and discovered love where he least expected it. If you love stories about second chances, hidden dreams, and the courage to finally be seen, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join us. You won't want to miss what happens next. On the 17th floor of a glass tower, mornings began with the hum of a coffee machine and the harsh glow of fluorescent lights falling in neat rows across identical desks. Jonah Miller arrived at exactly 7:30. Not early, not late, a rhythm as precise as a metronome. He hung his navy coat on the back of his chair, slid a battered stainless mug into the machine, waited for the beep, and pulled up the office calendar on his monitor. 6 meetings stacked tight, 3 deadlines looming, 1 court call. He knew the schedule better than the partners themselves. Jonah was tall but narrow-shouldered, with long fingers shaped by years of guitar practice he no longer admitted to anyone. He kept his head slightly bent when walking the hall, as if apologizing for taking up space. Around the office he was just Jonah from admin, a polite shorthand that hid the truth. This place would collapse without him, if you asked anyone. What kept Stone and Partners running? They'd name a senior partner or a high-profile case. Only when a meeting double-booked or a key file went missing did people remember the quiet man in the corner who always seemed to know where to look. At 8:02, a paralegal pinged him in a panic. Can't find the original witness statement in paralegal. The Grant case. Did you see it? Jonah typed back, give me a sec. He rose, slipped into the records room, and let the chilled air wrap around him. The place was a labyrinth of cardboard boxes and hanging files, but to Jonah, it was sheet music. Every drawer had a rhythm, every folder a key. Grant Q301. He pulled the drawer, skimmed the labels, saw his own handwriting on a sticky note. Original moved to exceptions due to faded ink. Of course, he crossed the aisle, opened cabinet 14, and there it was, a thick file with a yellow tag. He smiled faintly. Things rarely disappeared. They just needed someone to remember. He dropped the file on the paralegal's desk. She exhaled. You just saved me. Jonah nodded, already turning back to his chair, back to the endless calendars. Fixing schedules was like arranging chords. Every move had to land at the right beat. Too soon, the sound was jarring. Too late, the whole song fell apart. The elevator chimed. Lila Stone, managing partner and heir to the firm's legacy, walked in. She wasn't movie star beautiful, but she carried weight, the kind of presence that bent conversations toward her. Gray coat, sleek bun, fountain pen clipped to her pocket. She never rushed, never wasted words. Employees learned to fear and admire her in equal measure. Her gaze swept the room, then stilled on Jonah, not because of his frayed collar or quiet posture, but because she caught him shifting 2 conflicting meetings on his screen, with practice speed, firing off a clean apology email before anyone knew the disaster existed. 12 seconds, problem solved. He thought no one noticed. She did, Jonah. Her voice was calm, sharp enough to cut glass. He looked up. Yes, Miss Stone? Can you step into my office for a moment? A dozen eyes flicked his way as he followed her across the floor. Inside, the walls smelled faintly of walnut, the city's chaos muffled behind double glass. She gestured to the chair across from her desk. I heard you tracked down the missing Grant statement, she said. Was moved to exceptions. I relabeled the location so it won't happen again. Last week you also caught the scheduling error in the McNeil filing. Just overlapping deadlines. If we hadn't fixed it, the court would have treated it as late. You've been here past 7. 3 nights in a row, Jonah blinked. He hadn't thought she noticed. He wasn't sure he wanted her to. Work piled up, that's all. She studied him, eyes steady, weighing something. Jonah, thank you. Not the throwaway kind of thank you, a real one. If it weren't for you, this firm would be limping today. He didn't know where to put his hands. On his knees? On the desk? He laced his fingers together beneath the table, hiding the restless twitch of fingers that longed to strum a chord. This Friday, Lila said, slow and deliberate, there's a restaurant I like. Quiet place, no flashy decor. The chef knows how to cook fish. Have dinner with me. No business talk. The words sank in like a pebble hitting water, rippling out farther than they should have. Jonah saw his tiny apartment at night, guitar across his lap, melodies he recorded, then deleted. He heard his father's voice again. Get a real job, Jonah. He remembered the way co-workers' eyes slid past him as if he were part of the copier. You don't have to answer now, Lila added, sensing his silence. Think about it. Yes, ma'am. He rose, started for the door. Jonah? He turned. Don't you want anyone here to know how good you really are? The question didn't sting. Oddly, it steadied him. It was like a hand tugging him above water. I want to do good work, he said carefully. The rest, I'm not sure it's mine to decide. Maybe it should be. A half smile, or maybe just a challenge. Email me if you'll come. Back. At his desk, his pulse thudded, not from the invitation itself, but from the question she left behind. Don't you want people to know how good you are? He opened his inbox, the system pinged. Filing update successful. Cold lines of text, but somehow proof he still existed. He pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over the voice memo app. It had been weeks since he recorded anything. Every night he promised himself tomorrow. Every morning he closed the draft to catch his train at lunch. Jonah perched on the wide windowsill at the end of the hall, chewing a dry sandwich while watching taxes crawl below. Across the street, a cafe stereo played an old soul track, warm, against the winter air. He hummed, then whistled, then tapped a few notes into the recorder. Hesitant at first, then stronger, like words gathering into sentences. He thought of the restaurant Lila described, quiet, unpretentious, and the melody fell into step, steady as footsteps on worn wood. The afternoon detonated. Court moved to hearing. 3 meetings collided. Phones rang, voices snapped. Jonah shut. His eyes opened 4 calendars at once and worked like a conductor calling cues. 12 minutes later, the room stilled. Schedules realigned, panic subsided. No one asked how. No one cared. That was fine. As long as the music didn't break. At 6:48, the floor emptied. Jonah powered down, grabbed his coat. In the elevator, his phone buzzed. Sender, l.stone@stonepartners.com. Subject line, Friday night, 7:30 if you want. Inside, an address. And one last line, no business. I want to hear about your music. The doors closed, stainless steel reflecting his face back at him. For once he really looked. 32 weary eyes, shirt collar worn thin. And yet, under all that something flickered. Not ambition, not arrogance. More like a spring welling under stone, looking for light. That night, his apartment glowed. In the soft haze of a single lamp. Guitar in hand, Jonah strummed the melody from lunch. Fingers faltered, then found their way. The song told of a man drifting like a shadow through office halls until a single question cracked his shell. Don't you want people to know how good you are? The song had no name yet, but Jonah knew it would. He set the guitar down, opened his closet. White shirt pressed, black slacks clean. Scuffed brown shoes shined as best as he could manage. He thought of Mateo, his artist friend, shaking his head. Man, you need a real jacket, Jonah smiled. Maybe tomorrow he'd ask for help. Maybe, before sleep, he set his alarm 10 minutes early. Then, almost against his nature, he replied, "I'll be there. 7:30. After a pause, he added a second line, "And I'll bring a draft." Outside, the city roared like an ocean. Inside, Jonah's heartbeat settled, not to the grind of machines, but to the echo of warm strings. Somewhere between two notes, a hairline crack split the shell around him. And through it, just faintly, light began to spill in. Friday arrived too quickly. By Thursday night, Jonah was still staring at his closet like it was mocking him. 3 shirts, all the same shade of white. 2 pairs of slacks, both black. The only difference was how many washes each had endured. He pressed the least frayed shirt, polished his brown shoes again, and sat on the edge of his bed, wondering if he could really walk into a place where the cheapest bottle of wine probably cost more than his rent. That was when the knock came. 3 short raps and a voice. "Open up, man." "I know you're in there," Jonah sighed. Only one person knocked like that. Mateo Vargas, his oldest friend and a painter who dressed like every day was an exhibition. Tonight, ripped jeans, a mustard blazer, and a scarf knotted like he had a stylist on payroll. "Don't tell me you're going to dinner with your boss in that funeral outfit," Mateo said, sweeping inside before Jonah could answer. He yanked the closet doors wider and groaned. "Jesus, your wardrobe looks like witness protection." "It's fine," Jonah muttered. "It's just dinner." No. Mateo planted himself in front of Jonah. "She didn't ask you for a staff meeting. She asked you for you. That means you show up as someone worth seeing." Jonah bristled. "And what if I'm not?" Mateo's grin softened. He put a hand on Jonah's shoulder. "Brother, you've been playing ghost so long you forgot you're flesh and blood. You're not invisible. You just stopped looking in the mirror." Jonah didn't answer, but something in him shifted. The next evening, when Mateo dragged him into a small boutique 2 subway stops away, he didn't resist. The clerk raised an eyebrow at Jonah's timid posture. Mateo clapped once, loud and decisive. "We need a miracle. Something sharp but not screaming. He's got dinner with a queen, and he can't show up like a court jester." The first few jackets Jonah tried felt ridiculous, too tight, too flashy, too expensive. But then came a charcoal gray blazer that fit like it belonged to him. Clean lines, subtle sheen, shoulders squared without stiffening him. He stared at his reflection. For once, he didn't look like an afterthought. He looked present. Mateo whistled low. "There he is. Took you 32 years to meet yourself." Jonah smirked, embarrassed, but he bought the jacket. Friday, 7:15 p.m. The cab dropped him outside a downtown restaurant whose windows glowed golden against the night. The name, simple, elegant, was etched in brass above the door. His stomach twisted. He checked his watch twice before stepping inside. The hostess glanced up, and Jonah saw the flicker of recognition, then surprise. "Reservation for Miss Stone?" she asked. "Yes, Jonah Miller." She smiled a little too brightly, leading him past a sea of hushed conversations and clinking glasses. Jonah's pulse thumped as he spotted her at a table by the window. Lila Stone, framed by city lights, scrolling her phone with that effortless authority that made even silence feel deliberate. When she looked up, the change in her face almost undid him. Her eyes widened, not in shock, but in something gentler, like she'd stumbled upon a song she didn't expect to love. "Jonah," she said, standing. "Hope I'm not late," he managed. "You're right on time." She motioned to the chair. He sat, acutely aware of every heartbeat. The first few minutes were polite. Menus, wine list, casual mentions of the weather. Jonah clung to the familiar rhythm of small talk. But then she set the menu aside and leaned forward. "Tell me something about yourself," she said. "That has nothing to do with this place." He froze. No one ever asked him that, not seriously. He almost deflected, almost said nothing much. But the sincerity in her gaze disarmed him. "I used to play guitar," he admitted, voice low. "I wanted to be a musician." Wrote songs too, even played at subway stations once. Her eyebrows lifted. Really? Why'd you stop? Jonah stared at his water glass. Life got practical. People said it wasn't responsible, so I stopped believing it could be. She was quiet a moment. Then, that's a shame. I think the world could use more people like you making music. The words lodged in his chest, unfamiliar and heavy. Praise for his spreadsheets never reached this deep. This was different. Dinner arrived, salmon for her, steak for him, but Jonah barely tasted it. Conversation flowed in currents he hadn't felt in years. They talked about childhood summers, about books they loved, about the loneliness of carrying responsibility. She laughed at his story of a disastrous open mic night. He found himself listening more than speaking, because she wasn't just nodding, she was listening back. By the time dessert plates were cleared, something electric hummed between them. Jonah felt it in the way she looked at him, not as her employee, not as a shadow in the office, but as a man with a pulse, with a past, with a voice. When they stepped out into the cool night, city air brushing against them, Jonah realized he hadn't checked his watch once during dinner. They walked slowly toward the curb. The streetlight threw a soft glow over her hair. A strand slipped loose, catching on her cheek. Without thinking, Jonah reached out, hesitated, then gently tucked it back. His fingers barely brushed her skin, but the moment stretched, charged. You clean up well, she teased softly. Blame Mateo, he said. I'll thank him, she replied, her voice lower now. Then, after a beat, but he didn't create this version of you, he just revealed it. Jonah's chest tightened. He searched her face for sarcasm. There was none. At her car, he lingered, not ready to end the night. She seemed to linger too. For a heartbeat, the world hushed. Then, slowly, she lifted his hand. She didn't kiss it, not quite, just held it close enough for him to feel her breath. Good night, Jonah, she said. He could barely breathe. Good night. As she slipped into the car, Jonah stood on the sidewalk, his hand tingling, heart lighter than it had been in years. The city around him blurred, neon and headlights melting into streaks of color. All he could think was, he had been seen, truly seen, and nothing would ever feel the same again. Monday morning. The elevators were crowded, the air thick with burnt coffee and pressed wool. Jonah stood in the back corner, navy tie knotted too tight, fingers wrapped around a paper cup that had already cooled. The weekend replayed in his mind, like a film he didn't want to end. The warm lights of the restaurant, her laughter, the softness of her voice when she said good night, Jonah. For 2 days he'd carried it like a secret melody only he could hear. But secrets in an office, this size never stayed hidden long. The first sign came as he stepped onto the 17th floor. Conversations faltered, eyes flicked sideways, then back to their screens. A pair of junior associates smirked when he passed, their whispers not as quiet as they thought. By mid-morning, the whispers had turned into a low buzz. Dinner with the boss. Must be nice. Guess spreadsheets aren't the only thing he's good at. Stones type? Who knew? Each remark landed like grit in Jonah's throat. He kept his eyes on his monitor, typing faster than usual, as if speed alone could drown the noise. But the glances burned. At lunch, the break room was half full. Jonah took his salad to a corner table. Across the room, 2 paralegals leaned close, snickering. One made a show of batting her lashes, murmuring, "Yes, Miss Stone, another late night at the office?" The other laughed, quick and sharp. Jonah pushed his fork through lettuce he had no appetite for. He'd been invisible for years. Now suddenly, he was visible, but not for the reasons that mattered. That evening, he stayed later than most, waiting for the office to empty. The building hummed with fluorescent silence. He was adjusting tomorrow's docket when he felt the shift of air, the subtle presence at the edge of his cubicle. Jonah. He turned. Lila stood there, coat draped over one arm, expression unreadable. "Can we talk?" He nodded, following her into her office. The skyline glared behind the glass, city lights flickering like restless thoughts. She shut the door. For the first time, the space felt heavy. "I know what's going around," she said quietly, "and I'm sorry. It's not your fault." "Yes, it is." Her voice was calm but firm. "I'm your boss. No matter what's real between us, people will twist it. That power imbalance, it matters." Jonah swallowed hard. "So what do we do?" She leaned against her desk, arms folded. "I've already spoken to HR. If this continues, I'll address it openly. Make it clear nothing improper is happening." Jonah blinked. "You'd go public?" "If that's what it takes." The thought made his stomach clench. He pictured more whispers, more knowing glances. "And if I don't want the spotlight?" Lila met his eyes steady. "Then we stop. This only continues if you want it to." There it was. The line he hadn't expected. Her to draw. Not an ultimatum. A choice. He looked down at his hands, restless in his lap. "I don't know what I want," he admitted. "Then take time to figure it out." Her voice was soft now, stripped of command. For a moment, she wasn't his boss. She was just a woman giving him space. Jonah nodded, throat tight. He left her office feeling both lighter and heavier. That night, his phone buzzed. It wasn't her. It was an email from a company he'd admired for years. A small independent record label, known for nurturing songwriters instead of packaging. Stars. Subject line, interested in meeting. He opened it, heart thudding. The recruiter had somehow heard one of his old demos, a track he'd uploaded years ago and forgotten about. "Your sound has raw honesty," the message read. "We'd love to talk about possibilities." Jonah stared at the screen. Music, his music. Not office chatter, not spreadsheets, not whispered jokes. An invitation to step back into the life he'd buried, but if he took it, he knew what it meant. It meant leaving this firm, leaving the routine, leaving her. He closed the laptop, but sleep didn't come. His mind pulsed with two rhythms. The echo of Lila's words, "This only continues if you want it to," and the hum of a guitar string, vibrating faintly in memory. 2 days later, they met at a quiet cafe by the river. Far from the office and its shadows, Lila was already seated, her posture less guarded than usual, a scarf draped loosely around her shoulders. Jonah slid into the chair opposite, hands clasped around his coffee cup. "I got an offer," he said finally. Her eyes flicked to his, searching. "From another firm?" He shook his head. "A record label. Small, but it's real." Silence stretched. Then she smiled faintly. "Of course it's music." "It's everything I wanted once," Jonah admitted. "But if I take it, we won't see each other every day," she finished for him. "Exactly." The river outside shimmered, catching city light. Jonah couldn't read her face. "I don't want you to leave," she said finally. "But I want even less to be the reason you stay." The honesty of it stung, but it also steadied him. He breathed out, shoulders loosening. "I'm not sure what to choose," he said. "Then don't decide yet," she replied gently. "Take the weekend. Ask yourself what you really want. Not what they expect from you, not what I want, what you want." Jonah studied her. "You'd be okay with me leaving?" "No," she said simply, "but I'd be proud of you." That weekend, rain battered his apartment windows. Jonah stayed in, wrapped in a blanket, surrounded by old notebooks filled with half-songs, scribbled lyrics, chords that trailed off. Midline. He strummed his guitar, soft at first, then stronger. When had he started shrinking to fit the box people built around him? When had practicality become a cage? He thought of the man in the mirror in that gray blazer. The man who walked into a restaurant and made Lila Stone lose her composure for a heartbeat. That man wasn't a stranger. That man was him. Now he just had to decide which life he wanted him to live. By Monday morning, Jonah had his answer. He printed a final report, cleared his desk, slid an envelope onto Lila's desk. Inside was his resignation. When she looked up, surprise flickered. But he spoke before she could. "I'm leaving," he said quietly. "Is it for the label?" "No, it's for me." He placed a hand on the envelope. "I've spent too long building someone else's empire. I need to build my own. I'm going to finish the songs I started. I'm going to stop hiding behind calendars and drafts. I want a life that doesn't keep me invisible." Her eyes softened. Not disappointment, pride. "You're incredible, Jonah. You always were." Something inside him eased. He smiled, a little sad but steady. "We may not work together anymore." She rose, walked around the desk, took his hand. "No," she said. "But this doesn't have to end unless you want it to." Jonah searched her face. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew this much. He wasn't walking away from himself this time. The rain had stopped when he left the building. The city smelled clean, washed new. In his pocket, his phone buzzed again, the label following up. Jonah smiled. For the first time in years, he felt ready to answer. And as he walked toward the subway, his steps matched a rhythm he'd almost forgotten. A song. His song. 1 year later, the lights in the Brooklyn bar were dim, the kind of dim that made candles glow brighter. And string lights look like constellations. The stage was small, no bigger than a kitchen rug, but tonight it felt like a galaxy. Jonah Miller stood at the center, guitar strapped across his chest, mic angled close. The room was packed, friends, strangers, curious locals. He could feel the weight of their anticipation pressing forward, waiting for the first chord. He wasn't in a gray cubicle anymore. He wasn't Jonah from admin. He was just Jonah. And for the first time that was enough. He leaned into the mic. "This song," he said, voice steady, "is for anyone who's ever felt invisible. For anyone who thought their dream expired before they had the courage to chase it. It didn't. You didn't." The crowd hushed. Jonah's fingers found the strings, and the melody poured out raw, honest, alive. The same melody he'd hummed in a break room window months ago, now grown into something whole. His voice carried it, rough around the edges but real. And the room leaned in as if to catch every syllable. From the back wall, a figure watched. Lila Stone, dressed simply in a navy jacket, hair down, expression soft. She didn't dominate the space here the way she did in boardrooms. Here, she was just one of many, but her eyes never left him. When the song ended, the room erupted. Applause thundered against the low ceiling, whistles and cheers colliding. Jonah lowered his head, breath catching. For years, silence had been his companion. Now sound, real, human sound, lifted him higher than he'd ever imagined. After the set, Jonah packed his guitar, hands still trembling. He stepped outside into the cool night, air sharp with the smell of rain on pavement. That was when he heard her voice. "You always had it." He turned. Lila stood a few feet away, hands tucked into her coat pockets. For a moment, neither moved. Then Jonah smiled. "I didn't believe it back then." "Belief catches up," she said softly. They walked side by side down the block, the city alive around them. Neon signs buzzed. A couple laughed loudly from a doorway. A cab splashed through a puddle. None of it touched the quiet between them. "You left," she said finally, glancing at him. "But you didn't disappear. You just became visible in a different way." He nodded. "I had to. I know." She paused. "Do you regret it?" Jonah thought about the long nights rewriting songs, the fear of bills stacking up, the moments he almost gave in and looked for another desk job. He thought of the first demo he finished, the letter from the label saying "We believe in you," the email from a stranger saying "Your song sounds like my life." He shook his head. No, not once. They stopped under a street lamp, its glow haloing the drizzle around them. Jonah looked at her, really looked. She wasn't the unreachable CEO anymore. She was a woman who had seen him before he saw himself. "I used to think my story was about you," he admitted. "About us. But it's not. It's about me finally stepping out of the shadows." Her lips curved. "That's exactly why I still believe in us." Something loosened in his chest. The city blurred. All he saw was her, steady and luminous in the rain. Weeks later, Jonah's debut EP dropped on streaming platforms. The cover was simple. A photograph of him standing at that break room window, guitar slung across his back, city blurred behind glass. The title, The Invisible Man, but listeners didn't hear a ghost in those tracks. They heard a heartbeat, a man choosing himself, a voice finally unmuted. Reviews called it raw, authentic, quietly powerful. Jonah didn't care about the words. What mattered were the messages flooding in. "I quit my job to start painting again. Your song gave me the courage to finally leave a relationship that made me feel invisible. I never thought anyone understood, but you do." He saved them all in a folder named Proof. Proof that he mattered. Proof that sound could outlast silence. One night, after a small show in Queens, he sat with Layla on the hood of his car, city lights blinking across the river. She pulled something from her coat pocket, a tiny black notebook. "What's that?" he asked. She handed it to him. Inside, his name was scribbled on the first page, bold and certain. Below it, her handwriting, "You were never invisible. You just needed to hear it out loud." Jonah closed the book, throat tight. "Why me?" Her eyes met his. "Because you were the only one in a room full of noise who kept playing your own song." Months passed, and the shows grew bigger. Jonah stood on larger stages now, but he never forgot the bar with the string lights or the office window where he first hummed the melody that changed everything. Every performance, he closed with the same words: "Don't wait for permission to be seen. Start by seeing yourself." That's where the story begins. The crowd always roared, and somewhere in that roar, Jonah felt the boy he used to be, the one who gave up too soon, smile back at him. The night his first album went gold, he returned home, guitar case heavy in his hand. On his desk sat a single envelope. No label, no name, just his initials, written in simple black ink. Inside, "Jonah, you surprised me in all the best ways. Always. L." He laughed, breath shaky, eyes burning. He picked up his guitar, strummed a chord, and let the poof sound swell through the room. This wasn't the end. It was only the first verse. And for the man who once thought he'd spend life in the background, that was more than enough. Some stories don't end. They echo. Jonah's music didn't just belong to him anymore. It belonged to every quiet soul who once believed they had to live in the shadows. His songs reminded them that invisibility was never permanent. All it took was a single note, a single step, a single choice to break through the glass. And maybe that's the point. Every one of us has a melody waiting. We just have to be brave enough to play it. If Jonah's journey touched you, even in a small way, don't let it stop here. Share it, carry it. And if you'd like to walk with us through more stories like his, where ordinary lives find extraordinary light, then stay close. Subscribe, join the family, and let's keep stepping out of the shadows together, because the world is waiting for your song too.